So in this session, I'm using the Digitakt in the simplest way, like stupid simple. It's the syncing aspect with Ableton Live that has a few little tricky parts that I'm going to walk you through step by step. And of course, the idea of using the Digitakt as a fill machine is a concept that applies to pretty much any other setup as well, especially when it comes to builds and lifts, which is, I would argue, the most difficult part of putting together a DAW set or even a set with Ableton Live. And this is a discussion that I see quite often within the online community. If the build or the lift isn't like specifically built into the stems of your music, we're all looking for interesting ways of doing that on the fly. If you're not an Ableton user, maybe you're doing this in a DAW-less way, you could just go ahead and skip over the Ableton syncing part. Timestamps are linked in the description if you'd like to do that. This video is sponsored by DistroKid. They are a music distribution platform that's geared towards independent artists and producers. I've been using them for years now. No complaints. It really is the easiest and most affordable way to get your music onto major streaming platforms like Spotify, Apple Music, iTunes, all the rest. And we'll be going through a few reasons why I think they're the best later in this video. I also have a ton of exclusive content, videos, samples, and much more over on my Patreon. In fact, I upload content on a weekly basis. I'm also giving a discount for one-on-one lessons to Patreon members. Also check that out in the description. I know that you guys always like to know the gear that I'm using as well, so I've got the Digitakt front and center. On the left, I have the EC4. This is a MIDI controller from FaderFox. So 16 knobs, and they also have a dual function. They're also buttons. So I'm using this to control effects over in Ableton Live. If you're interested in any of this gear or any gear in past videos and future videos, please use the affiliate links in the description of my videos. It helps me a lot. Syncing the Digitakt with Ableton Live, I'm going to go over to Preferences, Link MIDI. From here I have Input, Track, Sync, Remote. These are all on. I've turned them on. And same thing with Output. So this way, if I want to send MIDI information to the Digitakt or from the Digitakt, I have like a nice little loop there. So now when I launch a scene in Ableton, let's see what happens. Right, so we're tracking right away. Great. So that works. The next thing you're probably going to want to do though is set up program change. So let's say that you have a set, you have a bunch of scenes prepared in Ableton Live. So how do I set up program change so that these patterns and fills match up with the scenes in Ableton? First off, make sure that you're sending to the right MIDI channel within Ableton. So if I head over to MIDI config, head over to channels, I go down to auto channel, it's auto set to 10. So within Ableton, I have MIDI 2 Electron Digitakt, and I've set this to channel 10. Ideally, you then have to set up a MIDI channel for each scene. So I've only set up these two here just for this little example. On the first MIDI channel here under notes, I've got program change set to bank 1, sub 1, program 1. So bank 1, program 1, or pattern 1. And so you guessed it, obviously on the next scene, if I want to switch to the next pattern, bank 1, sub 1, program 2. So now it's bank 1, sub 1, program 2. So I'll play the same scene transition as before. We'll see if this works. Okay, transitioning. 2, 3, 4. It didn't work? Actually, it did. See? So did you see what just happened there? So I'm not sure if you noticed, but the Digitakt was 1 bar behind the transition in Ableton. And the reason for that is this little quantization setting right here under launch. So I'm going to go back to this first scene or, whatever, this transition. I'm going to set quantization over to none. Same thing with the second scene as well. Try this again. Two, three, 4, and it switches right away. Let's go back to the last scene. 2, 3, 4, back to 1, right? So that's how you have to do it. It's still a little bit tricky depending on at what point within a scene that you trigger to go into the next scene. There is still a chance that the Digitakt will get a little bit confused and maybe jump to the next pattern too early. So that's like a trial and error sort of thing, something that you have to practice within your set to get proper. So the Ableton setup is out of the way. Let's take a look at the Digitakt setup now. This is where we're essentially focusing in on the Digitakt and using it as a fill machine. To my knowledge, there's nothing within Ableton or within other non-Electron products that function in this way, wherein if I play through a sequence where I've programmed notes, nothing will happen unless I activate this page or fill/scale button, entering into fill mode. So that's what we're gonna look into. If you're a complete noob with the Digitakt, here's a video that sort of explains to you what fill mode is and just like the basics of the Digitakt. But before going any further, I see so many people run into this wall and have this issue. So MIDI config, sync, I'm gonna make sure that transport receive, program receive, and what's this? Clock receive. These are all ticked. So now the Digitakt will receive MIDI information, in my case from Ableton. And so I'm just gonna head over into my sample pool and select the fill. These are all like pre-selected. I knew that they had to be at 123 BPM, which matches the tempo here. They're all samples. They might be cheeseball samples. I'm not sure if they're gonna fit. We'll find out. But you know, just to demonstrate a point here, let's choose this one and just see what it sounds like before dropping it in. Okay, let's try that. I'm going to specifically select this step, head over to trig, condition, bring that down to fill mode. So now when I play this sequence, it does not play unless I hit the page button or the fill button. Okay, so let's hear this in combination with it definitely does something, but let's try it in combination with some Ableton effects as well. Same thing, here we go. So that's cool. Maybe it's just not the right fill, but we're gonna take another stab at this. We're gonna add even more effects to the fill itself to make it more impactful. So let's add some reverb and delay to that fill. Maybe some overdrive as well. Definitely getting somewhere with that. So as I previously mentioned, because these are samples, I have to make sure that they are at the right tempo. Another way you could do it though is to use one-shots to build up your fills, in which case you don't really need to worry about the tempo of your samples. Depending on the gear that you might own, of course, you're not limited to Digitakt effects either. You could use like a whole other effects unit with the Digitakt as like a master fill thing. And of course, depending on these samples that you're using, you could change the flavor of the fill going into each section as well. I think it's useful to bring up or like conceptualize live sets like this in general. I find that there are just so many powerful tools or instruments out there. It's really about finding the instrument or the thing that fits into the setup that you already have. And this is something we're gonna dig into a little bit more, but before that, let's talk about today's sponsor, DistroKid. If you are an independent artist or producer, DistroKid is pretty much the #1 choice. First off, there's a discount linked in the description of this video, which I encourage you to use. It's just over $20 a year to release unlimited music to all major streaming platforms. And one of the things that makes it amazing for independent artists is just the sheer amount of free promotional tools that they offer. Personally, my favorite is Hyperfollow, which I like to use as a free link in bio link. It's the cleanest that I could find, and you're able to claim as many pages as you'd like for free. So for example, if you have multiple artist names or possibly landing pages for singles or any other important landing pages, DistroKid's got you with Hyperfollow. They recently released an iOS app so you can access all of your DistroKid information, your statistics, all through your smartphone, which just makes everything that much easier and like on the go. So join the team. There's over 1 million DistroKid users and they distribute 1/3 of the world's music. Make sure to use the discount link in the description of this video. Conceptualizing live sets. This is definitely something I've been thinking about a lot these days. I find that if you're using a unit standalone DAW-less like the Digitakt, there's just you run into so many limits. I find that the best way to get rid of some of these limits is to use specific pieces of gear for like a specific thing within the set, and that's the only thing that thing covers. And yes, this does mean like lots of exploring and possibly spending money on the right gear for you, depending on the style of music that you're creating. But this is what I've learned within my journey these past 3 or 4 years. And now that I've more or less figured out this Ableton syncing situation, I'm thinking of exporting all of my drums possibly over to the Analog Rhythm Mark II, which I don't own at this point, but I would like to one day. This takes a lot of weight off of my computer, and obviously I just have a lot more control over like every aspect of the drums. Is it more work to set up? It certainly is, and I'll let you guys know what I discover along the way if I do get into that setup. If you guys have any suggestions about that setup or other drum machines, combinations with Ableton, just let me know. That's what I have for you guys today. Thank you so much for being here. Affiliate links are in the description. I have a Patreon, discounts on one-on-one lessons, tons of content over there as well, exclusive content. I hope that this video helped you guys out and hope to see you in the next one.